and the clock says it's 8 o'clock. If we were an hour earlier, it would have told me to take my trash out tonight, but I think I'll do that in the morning when it's a little warmer, hopefully. Hey, good evening. It is 8 o'clock. It is Tuesday, January 21st, and this is the DMR Tech Net TV version where we try and explain digital mobile radio technology and make it so it's, or demystify it so it's not as misunderstood as people have it. See, tonight I have another one of my DMR TechNet co-stars, Stan, WB8QJZ, and also Rick, 88KN. Steve can't make it till later. He's got his Hop Keto exam tonight. Brad has his amateur radio club has other things going on, and I'm not sure where Tom N8TJ is, but that's okay.
What kind of exam?
Steve has Hop Keto. He's got a test for his martial arts.
Oh, that's what that. Oh, okay.
That's Hop Keto. So, welcome everyone. During the month of January, we've decided that we're going to go back to the basics on DMR, digital mobile radio, and talk about what is DMR and how do you get started with it. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about what it is, how to get started with it. Last week, we talked about radios, what DMR radios that we were using or people were currently using with everyone that checked in the show. And then last night, because we do our DMR TechNet show every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Brandmeister Talk Group 31266. Too many channels to remember. The Michigan Nets channel. And last night we talked about, Stan, refresh me. What did we talk about yesterday? Hotspots and repeaters.
Yep.
And
other things.
And other things like dongles and other things. Thank you very much on that one, Rick. So, and we have Colin with us, Kurt with us, James with us, Ron with us, Alan, Rick,
Tom.
Stan, Robert, and Tom, N8TJ, Ken, and somebody's a Zoom user. Lucille must be on that one. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. So, real easy to get started with DMR. First, you got to figure out what the heck DMR is, and that's why we have my good friend Tom, N8TJ, the co-founder of the DMR TechNet. Tom, what is DMR? We're just getting the show started, and then we'll talk about how to get started with it.
Hello, everybody. N8TJ, Tom here in Clarkston, Michigan. What is DMR? DMR is a voice mode, digital mobile radio, and it's a both protocol and a mode of operating ham radio. And you get to talk, and your voice is digitized by inside your radio, comes out the other end, perfect, just about. Nice and clean, very modern. It's a fun mode, and it's adapted from a commercial type of situation. Motorola, I don't know if it's Motorola, but I see Motorola radios around. Go to Costco, you'll see Motorola DMR. Go to the Pine ski area, the supervisors are wearing Motorola. I asked them about it, and they've got different channels for different things, a ski patrol and things. It's channelized. The advantage of DMR over the other digital voice modes like C4FM and D-Star is that DMR is channelized from one end to the other. So you go on the 31266 Michigan Nets channel, and you can tell someone to meet you there. With C4FM, the repeater links into a talk group or a room, as they call it in the YSF Yazoo world, but that repeater's hooked into that room, and you kind of have to go where it goes. You can't get end to end more. It's just more channelized in DMR. So that's the biggest difference. They're all fun, and they're all have different better and worse type of situations. But the bottom line for all these digital voice modes is that they are crystal clear, and and very casual armchair copy, as they say in sideband. But it's just very, very fun mode, and you only need a technician license to operate in DMR mode, which is a good thing too. So you can jump right in. It's a little bit can be a little confusing to get set up, but all modes are when you're new in ham radio. So that's what this event here today is intended to help people understand how to get into it without so many headaches. So I had a few, but I figured it out. But that's what ham radio is. It's fun to figure it out. It might take a day, might take a week, might take a month. But when you do, you're talking, and then you take it from there and move on to expanding it and getting it better. So starting with DMR is just fine. It's -5 degrees here. Back to you, Dana.
As we were chatting earlier, Tom, -1 where I'm at, wind chill's -18 or so. But yeah, this episode tonight, most of you see or recognize, you already are on DMR. It's not really aimed at you. It's for people that are brand new to DMR, have never experienced it, curious what it is. We are recording this show, and we will put this on our YouTube channel and on our website so that people can learn on it. So,
Sorry, I didn't think.
so Tom explained what DMR is. Stan, how do we get started? If somebody wants to get into DMR, what do they have to do?
Well, Dana, the first thing they have to do is get an amateur radio license. And the basic license, the technician level license is all you need. You can work DMR anywhere you want because it's all generally on VHF or UHF frequencies. So got to do the studying, got to get the license. And once you get the license, then you need to apply for a digital ID. And of course, radioid.net handles out all of the digital IDs for the whole world. But in order to get there, you have to prove who you are, and you have to submit an official copy of your license, not a reference copy. Anyone can do a reference copy. I can print a reference copy of Tom's license, but only Tom can print out and obtain an official copy, which is what you need to submit. And once you get that, as long as you use the, remember what email you use to register with, and make sure when you decide to register with a network like Brandmeister that you use that same email address, because it'll go through like that. And if you don't, then you're going to have to wait till someone like Corey Dean or someone else has some time to manually look at things and whatnot and get that through. But that's the point to get you started. And if you get through all that, then it's time to decide on a radio. And that's a whole other big subject.
Cool.
Back to you there, Dana.
Hey, Stan, I got a couple questions. First, what's the cost for a digital ID? Secondly, with amateur radio, if you're a technician, you can use these bands. If you're a general class, you get more privileges. If you're extra class, you get the whole privileges. Is that true in DMR?
DMR, once you're able to go and operate anywhere, and it's not going to cost you any more than the cost of getting your license, and that I believe it's still $35 fee. I have to renew my license fairly soon now. I think I'm almost within the 90-day window here now, but there is no cost to that digital ID. You can make a donation if you want, but it's relatively easy to get, and it's affordable for anyone.
So absolutely free to get your digital ID from radioid.net. Cool.
Yep.
That does come in handy. And then, so now that you've got your ham radio license, as Tom was talking about and Stan did, and you got your radio ID license. What's next? Stan was talking radios. Rick, tell us about radios.
Well, there's the whole gamut of radio from the $30 special, which is hard to program, up to the $300 Cadillac that's also hard to program. I've got two different radios. I've got the Anytone 878, which is kind of a mainstay of a lot of guys, and I've got a TYT MD 380. But what I did to my TYT is it supports a firmware version called OpenGD77. So I burned that on there first thing. So, and it is a little bit easier to deal with programming than the Anytone. But for any radio you get, you will have what's called a CPS, and I don't can't come up with a name for that.
Customer provided software or consumer provided software,
Okay.
computer provided, whatever.
Whatever.
That's
It's
how
a
you program
program
the
that's
radio.
running on your computer. You will use a USB cable, possibly a dongle on that cable, and plug it into the radio and talk to the radio. And that's how you program the different channels and zones and talk groups, etc. Usually a channel is a frequency in a talk group, but on OpenGD77, it's a talk group tied to a frequency. So you can tie umpteen talk groups to one frequency, which is a lot easier to deal with than having to replicate it multiple times for different talk groups. So it's a mishmash of stuff. And Stan has some cheaper radios out there that are, I think he said, were difficult and harder to program, but once you got them programmed, they worked. So there's a lot of different choices out there for radios. And I think Bofang even has one now, the 1701. So there's a lot of different choices on radios. So you kind of need to do some research and try and find somebody that has one to figure out if it fits you or not.
And Stan's showing a radio, and Tom was showing radios too. So you've got the radio, and you got to do software, but first you got to figure out which networks you want to use.
CFP is chicken fat product.
Hey, Tom, DMR networks.
What about
there's a bunch of networks out there, and the DMR Tech Net, we do our net every Monday night at 7:30 on Brandmeister. I think that's like the 800-pound gorilla in the room on their talk group 31266, the Michigan Nets channel. But we also frequent the TGIF network, talk group 31268, the DMR Tech Net channel. But you want to go talk a little bit about different DMR networks, Tom?
I can. I don't really know what the difference is, Basically, you set up your radio and you go to a place on a network. So I guess it's kind of like DirecTV versus Xfinity versus AT&T, Comcast, you get different channels. So there's different things on different networks. It's a network, the same thing, made up of computers and connections. The most unique network that you can get on with DMR is the MI5 Central Michigan Emergency Network here in Michigan. That's a network that's backboned with RF. It's a real ham radio network. If the internet goes down, that network will still function. It's not all over Michigan, but it's pretty far. It goes from Detroit, mostly in the middle, and up farther. You can look up cmen.net. So that's a cool network. We're on Brandmeister. That's an over-administrated network. That's my opinion. And the TGIF network is the Thank God It's Friday network. That's the most fun. So if you look up any of those networks on the internet, you can read about them. TGIF.net, is that what it is? It's .net, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
TGIFnetwork.net or something like that.
Yeah. And look, and there's going to be numbers that you program in using your chicken fat programmer on your radio, and then you'll be able to get there. So the networks are simply created by amateurs connecting different rooms and talk groups or spaces to talk on. So you channelize your radio to go to a particular talk group on a particular network. Brandmeister is a starting place. There's a lot of people on it, and you can get help on it. So, but the fun guys are on TGIF. That's what I think. Back to you, Dana.
Yeah, and there's other networks out there too, such as
There's plenty others. I'm not on a lot of them. I'm not on the DMARC or DMR Plus, whatever it is. What else is there?
There's a free DMR,
Free DMR.
What is that
Free
one?
DMR, there's no charge in that one.
Yeah, Freestar, Amcom, M17. There's
M17 is a whole new animal. That's both that's a protocol also like DMR, but it is going to have its own network. So it sounds like it's a whole nother network. That radio from Connect Systems has M17 on it. If you check this new QST magazine, it's got M17 and DMR, I think. It's got two different things on it, or maybe it's M17 and P25, but yeah. So the point is there's new things that are still going to happen. As fast as we're talking about these networks, there's going to be other ones developed. So that's how ham radio works.
It's like automobiles and radios in general. They keep changing constantly. Thank God for that.
Right.
So okay, so
one more thing, Dana.
Sure.
We throw the term networks around, and if you were a computer developer or mess with computer networks, you can probably draw some parallels to what Brandmeister and TGIF and Brandmeister has multiple servers, I think to include overseas servers. And once you transmit to Brandmeister, you have to identify a local or one of those servers that you're going to talk with. And your signal goes in through the internet to that server, and then it branches out and gets transmitted to all the other servers, and then goes out to whatever talk groups attached to that server. So there's a big, squirrely mess of where things are going. TGIF is a different story, but they only have one server. So they're a smaller network. I'm not sure what the others have, but like Brandmeister is, they're bigger, they have more rules, so you have to pay attention to the rules. But if you think of it in computer terms and servers, if you've ever messed with those things, then you understand how different traffic is going between different servers and out and all over the place.
I think I think the networks are gonna merge more, don't you, Rick? Because it's complicated.
I have no idea.
The bridging.
Wait, whoops, go ahead.
I was just saying the bridging is, it's like, what network are you on? I don't know. I'm on DMR, man. You can go anywhere that. So it's, I can see everything coming together more. So it's to be digital voice, but you'll be able to travel around, I think, as network administration gets more sophisticated. That's just a guess, but I'd like to see that happen. In other words, DMR would get simpler. It needs to get simpler. It doesn't need to get any more complicated.
I agree with you.
That's one of the things.
As far as it happening, just talking between Brandmeister and TGIF, there's two different philosophies there. And it takes a much bigger, a much more complex set of software to manage multiple servers.
Yeah. And that's why
TGIF doesn't like that, but don't think that, but it does. So
some of the networks were born out of a different philosophy of network administration. You're exactly right. Yep. So you're right. So what I'm asking is that they come together. But just a thought.
Sure would be nice
in the future of DMR.
Alan, did you have a question?
Well, I just think that what scares me is them all coming together is just going to create a monopoly of the internet. The servers, all the servers, one by one outfit that can then control everything that a ham radio operator needs to operate on DMR. So I don't know. I still think it's better to have a competition out there myself, but that's my opinion.
It's free. It's all free. So that really wouldn't happen. It's more.
No, This equipment is still owned by somebody. It's
Well,
free for us to use, but
free to use. But hold
they
on.
can still control their end of what goes through their equipment.
Hold on just a minute. Kurt, you're in Missouri. You guys
Yes.
there's networks where you live that are different than the networks where we live, or what the radios are using. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say the network. I mean, I use Brandmeister network here, just like you guys do there. There are different talk groups here in my local region that serve my local communities. But yeah, it's like that. But the other thing to think about, and there was a comment about server administration drove some network choices. I don't think it was as much server administration as it was features offered drove those choices. Because like Brandmeister has 50 servers driving their network, where TGIF has 2. Well, one of the features that Brandmeister offers that TGIF doesn't and has no plans to do is the hose line. Those servers are doing that audio decode work so somebody in a browser can just listen. That takes power and computing power to go do all that decode. So they need more servers.
Good point. And Stan, weren't you talking one time up in the UP in the summertime when you're there? I believe it's DMARC, or they've got different networks there that we don't use in mid-Michigan where I'm at, or where Ron's at over in New York, or James. You guys may see that there's different networks, so that may influence the radio you want to buy or the networks you want to use or the talk groups within those networks.
Well, in our area, there are 2 DMR Mark repeaters that are tied together to one another. One is way on the northern end of the Keweenaw Peninsula, and one is on the Michigan Tech campus in Houghton. And because it was DMR Mark, those are set up. They are Motorola radios, Motorola equipment, but you can talk on them with any tier 1 or tier 2 radio like we have. The problem they had with those was they were put in by some students at the university, and they got sick and tired of listening to all the Motorola employees yakking away on their way to work in the morning and when they left in the evening. So they pulled the plug and disconnected themselves from the Mark network. So right now there are wonderful repeaters. I can access them from 35 to 50 miles away on a rubber duck antenna sitting inside my RV. And we have beautiful, beautiful audio. The problem is it goes nowhere because there's no network behind it. There's no way to get out. They keep talking about they're going to tie some things in to Brandmeister, but so far that's been going for a couple of years. So my only access getting out of there is to use hotspots in some way, shape, or form.
And then we're coming up to that section of DMR, but yeah, and some radios only work with certain networks. So that's something else you have to keep in mind. But the nice thing with DMR, and I think of it this way, I used to work in radio, AM 730, 94.9 FM, WVIC, AM FM stereo in East Lansing. Think of amateur radio as AM radio. This is an old AM radio from the 60s. But DMR is like FM stereo, much better sound quality, much better battery life, much better fidelity. So that's one way to think of it that way. But it doesn't matter. You're going to hear what you want to hear, but I like hearing without all the static on the lines. That's the nice thing with DMR. So, okay, we've got different networks, different radios. How do we get the frequencies, the channels, the talk groups, the repeaters, what's the word I'm looking for, Tom? The rooms, I think it is, programmed on the radio, and that's where you have to program it with CPS, or sometimes it's easier with OpenGD77. But Rick, how do we program a radio? You can, and I know and I'm guilty. I bought this radio. This is my number 2 radio. My original one I bought, and I had it pre-programmed, the plug and play package. Hold on here. One of my radios listening to me. Thank you. And I bought mine pre-programmed, but now I just want 8 channels in my radio. But you learn how to do it. But Rick, you want to take the lead in this one? How to program your radio? A rough overview.
I hope I don't forget anything. But if I remember the right terms.
Well, basically frequencies, color codes, time slots, talk groups.
Well, one thing about DMR is it's half the bandwidth of a normal FM analog signal. So a normal FM analog signal is 25 kilohertz wide. A DMR is 12.5. So that means you can put 2 conversations in the width of one analog signal. And you've got analog repeaters that work, and they use a thing called time slots to identify where that signal goes. So you can use time slot 1 for something and time slot 2 for something else. It depends on the repeater admin which one you should use. I think normally it's time slot 2. It's the one I use most. So you've got to, find out if you're going to use repeaters, frequencies. One color code is just like your CP or
CTCSS.
Yeah, CTCSS code. So but you got to have the same one the repeater's working on. Same with your hotspot. You got to set it up in the same place. But so you've got to have that time slot, and then you're ready to start programming things. Now, some repeaters have certain talk groups on them, so they only have certain talk groups. So you got to research that too if you're going to use a repeater. In order to program the radio, with all that information, now you have to have talk groups and know which talk groups you want to go for. The person that has that is the network you're going to subscribe to. Assuming Brandmeister at this point, Brandmeister has a whole list of talk groups, and normally what happens on my Anytone is you download that list of talk groups and load them into your radio. Or excuse me, you load them into your CPS. And once it has all the talk groups, now you can start putting in channels that have a talk group and a frequency and your color code and your time slot. And what other information? There's a few other things you can reprogram.
You name your channels and kind of customize your radio too, Rick.
Pardon me?
You name your channel,
Oh yeah. You have your channels, and once you have those programmed in, you put those in zones, and you can organize the channels into zones, so you don't have just switching back and forth between frequencies of a repeater. You can create a local zone for Lansing. If you're up in another area, you can create a zone for that repeater, create a zone for your hotspot. You can organize them in the kinds of talk groups you want to talk on. You can organize them any way you want them, but you got to put them in a zone, at least in Anytone, to be able to find it. Same with OpenGD77. You need to have that zone. So those are the things you need to program. Once you get the gist of it, it's not that hard, but it's a computer. So if you have one little bit wrong, if you have one number wrong or one letter wrong, it's not going to work. So you have to be very, very diligent to get the right thing is. The other thing you need to put into your radio is a list of IDs. And you can get that from Brandmeister and get a list. There's over 200,000 of them now. I'm not sure how high they are. I think it's 215 or 20 or something like that.
You mean radio ID to get the digital IDs
okay,
programming your radio?
I would get those from Brandmeister for the Anytone. They do an Anytone variant. I think.
I just go to Radio ID. Go to the original
Okay.
source.
They have an Anytone variant because Anytone does things a little differently. But you put all those in your radio, and when you're talking with somebody, their call sign comes up along with their name. If you don't have them, it'll just be their radio ID that comes up. So that's the 90,000 foot level of programming your radio.
And Stan, I think you'll agree with me on this, and probably everyone else. Programming that radio via CPS is probably the hardest thing to do. That's what when I got started, I'm like, finally, hold on, Bridgecom, you can do it, handle it. So when I got it, I just plugged the radio in, plugged the hotspot in, because I had to give my Wi-Fi password and username or whatever, and turned it on. It worked. Wow. Technology works at that point versus I got to program it. I watched the videos and I had a block on that one. But Stan, would you say programming the radio is not the easiest part, but one of the hardest parts?
Well, I think initially it is. You're climbing this mountain, and that learning curve is so steep, and you kind of flounder, and you're not quite sure you're doing it. But once you get the first talk group to actually work, and you figure out that I need to chunk the radio first so I can hear something, and wow, now I've got someone on the other end and I actually talk to them. Once that first one is in, you're set. The rest of them are very easy. And then you get down more to what zone am I going to put things in and all of that stuff. But now it's very, very, very easy to, drop a new talk group in or edit, one. And I think you're better off just taking the plunge and doing it and learning, because ham radio is a learning process. And if it was totally appliance operation, it just wouldn't be as much fun.
We'd all be operating washing machines. What you do is you, like Stan said, is you copy. You get one channel to work, then you copy it, and then you change the name, change the talk group, and any other maybe color code or something like that, and you're on your way. You're off to the races. That's exactly the learning curve right there. It starts out slow, and then it gets quicker, much faster, and then you find out where the fun people are to talk to too.
Yeah, Stan's exactly right. That first one is a bear, but once you get through that, you can copy it and continue on. In fact, my first contact was on MI5, believe it or not.
Is that right? That's pretty cool.
I was going to say that once I got mine, I listened and listened and listened. Then I heard about that Michigan 1 DMR net. So I jumped on that, and I finally got brave enough to push to talk and checked in. And then after that, I remember we listened primarily Brandmeister 3126 statewide Michigan. Is that all of a sudden I'd catch Tom driving up north on weekends to go visit his uncle in Petoskey, and he liked chatting. And next you know, Stan's on there, and man, we had fun chatting on there. And then we picked up Steve KC8 WXM, and God, we just had a good old time. So that was fun until I think one day I had two of my hotspots in the same room turn on at the same time doing a loop, and that got me top group banned. But also there's that 10-minute limit Brandmeister has. So that's why we discovered other networks without a 10-minute limit. So
what you described, Dana, is how all ham radio modes are. You listen, and then you kind of get the courage up to jump in and actually start doing it. No matter what you're doing, you're going to do that exact same thing you said. So it's not really any different. DMR is not any harder. You want to do it right, but luckily, because it's ham radio, amateur radio, if you make a mistake, you get help. People help you and correct you 99 out of 100 times.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, it's like nothing worse than when you put your call sign out and nobody comes back to you. But
Yeah.
thank God there's guys like James, N8TMP. This morning, I try and get on the morning when I finally get the day rolling and I get on the radio and say hi to everyone or whoever's listening on TGIF 31268 or the Michigan Nets channel. Those are the ones I primarily follow. And it was nice. James, this morning you came back and said good morning because Brad was busy working and Steve was busy working and doing other stuff. But James, it was nice. It's nice that you jump on and say good morning.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. I like to say good morning to you because I usually have my radio on. So I usually have it on all the time.
And in fact, I see him in the background. Could you clean your desk off?
Yeah, I have my GMRS. I have my HD1, my original DMR. I have a TID radio GMRS that I unlocked, and then my BTEC 6x2. So
And speaking of networks, GMRS, there are no hotspots you can use with GMRS. Everything has to be via repeater. Is that correct?
everything's via the repeater or point to point, So yep, and with the MI5, it's the same guys that do the MI8. So or vice versa. The MI8 is the same guys that do the MI5, same towers.
So if
And
you
that's
don't use, go ahead,
that's
Tom.
that's GMRS MI8,
MIH GMRS, yes.
and that works
Yep,
pretty
and
good. That's good. Jay,
so there's a Detroit repeater, there's a Mount Clemens repeater, there's Mayville, Flint, Saginaw Bay City, and there was one in Sheboygan, that were all linked. I think I haven't heard Sheboygan in a while, so that one might be down. They might not be able to get it due to snow, but there's like 6 of them that are just tied together.
I'd like to look into that. That's really a good thing.
Yeah, it's $35. I had my call in just a couple days, and away you go. And there's a bunch of people on there. A lot of people, aren't hams. There are people on there that want to study to be, and get their hams, so they're just kind of getting their feet wet with GMRS. So it's a good stepping stone in the ham.
And James, did you tell me that I think it was your son-in-law was in one car, you and your wife are in the other car, and you use GMRS to communicate between?
So last year when we went to the UP, there were 3 of us, my son in one and my daughter and her husband the other, and I set them all up, and we were just on the simplex channel, and we were only a couple cars away, so it wasn't too bad, but it was great to be in communication with each other, and hey, we want to stop at this rest area up here, and so it worked out very well.
You were explaining MI5, MI6, MI8. Can you explain the differences between those?
So I know the MI8, which is the GMRS flavor, and the MI5 is the DMR. The MI6 and all that stuff, they have a bunch of other stuff that they do, but I've only accessed their GMRS and their MI5.
Tom, anything you want to add to that? And then I want to check in with Kurt.
Well, I think there's still places around that are the one thing about DMR is it's connected with the internet a lot of times. And so there's places up north that don't have internet. And so what Jay was just saying, the GMRS is great up north. I can take you to places where there's no cell coverage at all, every single time, very predictable. And so GMRS can cover that. And I'm talking about guys in their side-by-sides and their dirt bikes and stuff like that, out in the woods, no cell coverage. GMRS, it could be a lifesaver, literally. So it's a super good thing. That's the one thing. Stan said, well, it's a digital network. I think I understood him right. It was a digital network up there at Tech or whatever, but it's not connected to the internet. So what? It still covers holes where the internet might not be anyway. So don't let anybody say, well, DMR has to have, specifically from a digital perspective, DMR has to have the internet. No, it doesn't. It's a good, clean signal in places where the internet's not. And then the same guys that doing DMR are putting up GMRS networks that can cover it even further without a ham license. That's a great public service.
Hold on, Alan. I want to check
Yes.
with Kurt, and then I want to go to Dave because Dave's been doing this for a while. Kurt, you're in Missouri. Do you guys have like regional networks over there?
We do. There's a one I listen to all the time. There's a St. Louis Metro one. There's a Franklin County one. That's the county I'm actually in. There's a statewide. I think there's also a 4 like Northwest, Southwest Missouri talk groups that people use. Similar to like the Michigan one, there's a Missouri statewide tomorrow night. I think it's 7 p.m. Central. So there's some of the stuff like that goes on. And talking about repeaters and lack of coverage, Tom was just talking about that. I think people forget that all the DMR repeaters also have local non-routable talk groups built into them. Like talk group 9 is there that you can use, and it just stays on the local repeater.
That's cool. Cool. Thank you for your input on that one. Dave, you're down in Ann Arbor. Input you have on MI5, MI6, MI8, hotspots, repeaters, radios?
Well, MI5 does not actually have a node that's easily accessible from Ann Arbor. We have one in the Detroit area and one in Jackson. So there's kind of a black hole here. There's a couple of DMR machines that are up, but they're Brandmeister machines. They're not tied into the MI5. But I have a code plug that I've used for many years when I used to drive up to Auburn Hills every day, where the way the zones were set up was I could set a zone up for statewide 1 east. And then if I scanned through that zone, then as I was going between Ann Arbor and Auburn Hills, depending on which repeater was close to me, I would then fall on that repeater. It was kind of like a poor man's roaming, but actually worked out real well that way. So I know Rick was talking about there's all kinds of different ways to organize talk groups, but that was the way the talk groups were organized in the MI5 code plugs. So that's it. I don't know that there's been a lot of interest in GMRS here in the Ann Arbor area yet. Again, the thing about GMRS is that you cannot network the repeaters. So when you essentially set up a GMRS repeater, then the people that are going to use it need to be within that local area. And that's all who you're going to talk to, of course.
That's good to hear. Yeah, we used to sell those at Radio Shack. Family band radios and general mobile radio service. Good stuff on there. Stan, if you don't have a repeater nearby to connect with, we've been talking hotspots.
Right. I use a hotspot here all the time in the basement. I have an OpenSpot 3, and then as a backup, I have an older Pi-Star hotspot. So as they say, 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
Stan, you want to add some more on hotspots?
Well, I love to play with hotspots and try out different ones and so forth. Right now in this house here, I have 3 different hotspots running right now. I have one full duplex one on Brandmeister, and that was my original one when I first got into DMR. I have a TGIF spot, which is also on, which is a simplex one, and that is it has a touch screen on it, so I can make changes I want and whatnot and do that right there. And then I have a TGIF junior spot that I've got on the TGIF network, and they all communicate very nicely, and I can switch from one to another, and I haven't gotten blacklisted by Brandmeister yet.
I could be the only one.
I forgot to mention that I also have an RFinder radio that runs DMR over IP. And this is my travel radio because I can go any place with this in the US in particular. And it uses a GPS to be able to look up all the local repeaters in the area and program them directly into the radio. But also any place that I can get connectivity, and I can do it by setting up a hotspot on my cell phone if I want. or you can put a SIM in this. And as long as it has connectivity, you can do DMR over IP. And I don't know how many people know about the background of RFinder, but recently RFinder sold all of their software development business to Unified Radios. So Unified Radio now, it says it at the top of the screen now, but the latest version that they downloaded onto these RFinders, DMR over IP is as stable as it has ever been.
Very
So
nice.
they managed to fix some of the buggy problems that we had before. They might even end up re-releasing the TGIF stuff, which was taken out because it was so buggy. So right now, the DMR over IP only runs on Brandmeister.
So see, Tom, you're going to have to get an RFinder.
Those are nice. They're definitely Cadillacs, though. That's I'm glad to hear they work. They're working better all the time.
Well, and Unified Radios is putting out their own radio now. It's called the ComJot, COMJOT, and they have a couple of different versions of that they're just about ready to release those radios. So I think that this future of the RFinder is probably somewhat limited because of this. I think that what's happened is that the guy who was selling the RFinders, he skipped to Mexico. and essentially took all the money from Unified Radio for selling the software development business to them, but then ended up not telling them a bunch of stuff that they needed to know in order to be able to hack the radios.
I'll bet Stan's taking notes on that. He's probably looking for an RFinder now. Add to his collection.
I guess. Go ahead, Dana.
Hey, Rick. So, if a repeater doesn't carry the network or the channels you want, sounds like the best option is a hotspot. Is that correct?
Yep. Unless you can hit another repeater. When you talk about hotspots, they run from anywhere from those ones that you guys buy from Bridgecom to something like this. And this is an MMDVM hotspot on a Raspberry Pi 0W. It's not the 02, it's just the 0. This is my original. I ran this for at least a couple of years. I can plug it in now and it'll work fine. But I built this. I bought the case and the hat. I had the Raspberry Pi 2 on hand. So, or the Raspberry Pi 0 on hand. So you can build your own hotspots. It's not that hard. The issue is programming the damn things. So
that's always fun on that one.
Yeah.
But and I've got I've got one of the ones I bought. It's kind of like our friend Bob in the corner, Donald Quack Quack. He's got one, but he's got a better display on his. But it's, I think, a Raspberry 0 or a 1 or 2, something like that. I don't remember. It's a small one on that. But with a repeater, you can connect up to any talk group you want that you program into your radio.
It depends, Dana. Some repeaters only carry certain talk groups.
But if you're using your hotspot to connect to the networks, that's what I mean. You can program any talk groups you want into your radio, and with a hotspot, the world is your oyster. You can talk to whoever you want, provided you have it all set up.
Well, another advantage is you've got the dashboard. So Pi-Star or W0PSD, you've got a nice dashboard that has who you're talking to and other information on it. So,
and one thing, Rick, with the radio that you and I have, with a really small screen, Stan has that TGIF spot, which is, what's that, 3.4 inch, Stan? It's a touch screen also, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably something like that.
Yeah, it's a 3.5 inch next-gen display with a touch screen, and it allows you to do a number of things, and you can actually configure for your Wi-Fi and whatnot without connecting to a computer. You can just use the onboard touchscreen to do all that, which is kind of handy, and it's a nice big display, so it's You can get a lot of information without it. That sits next to my easy chair. I don't have a computer with a dashboard up. I just use that.
Comes in handy. And then Tom and Stan, we'll go to Tom first. You've also got, I believe it's an open spot instead of a hotspot
Yeah.
like what Rick and I were showing, and Stan was showing us also. Tom also uses, and I know Stan has one that has a dongle with it that allows you to connect up to the internet. Tom, you want to show us?
So you can accidentally mistake this for a bar of soap in the shower, but I don't think it's waterproof. But that's how big it is. So it's pretty good. And the February QST has the Open Spot 4 Plus or whatever it's called. And it looks exactly like this. And there's an article on it. I texted it to you, Dana, if anybody wants it. I couldn't figure out how to get it to, I had to screenshot all the QST articles. I borrowed them from my subscription, but you can read that article. If you want to read about this, you can either look in February, in February's QST, just came out. It's
They
the
have a
open.
rechargeable battery in them, which I really like.
It has a rechargeable battery. That's right, Dave. The coolest thing about the Open Spot is for a new user. It's got a very nicely laid out get started, quick start type of follow the menu, click here, click here. And I thought that was much better than fumbling around with PyStar in the configuration on that. So that was noteworthy about the Open Spot. Plus, it's got the battery, but it doesn't last, more than a couple hours. But it's got a C USB. I plug it into my car, and this is my mobile go-to bar of soap. When you go camping, it's
Yep.
very handy.
How does that handle shutdown, Tom?
We hold the off button and turn it off. That's what I do.
Okay.
There's two buttons on it. There's a Wi-Fi button for the AP mode, so it turns into a little network. That's how you first connect to it, right? Just like on PyStar, right? You hold down the little Wi-Fi button, and then it says, "Here I am," and you look at the configuration and find your
Okay.
router in your house, connect to it. Some guys do that wherever they go. They hold that down and connect. I just have my three main locations, my cell phone, my Wi-Fi here, my Wi-Fi up north. So I've got those programmed in already. When I turn it down, when it comes up, it looks for one, then it looks for the other, and it looks for the other. And the first one it finds, wherever I am, it connects. It's
Yep.
very quick too. It boots up really, really quickly. So it's fun to learn on an open spot. You can learn a lot because you can mess it up and get back. I was always more comfortable playing with this to try to do cross mode C4FM to DMR and things like that because I felt like I was afraid to get back to where I was with PyStar. That's just me, but I'd recommend OpenSpot. It's pretty good. It's $300, I think. I think that's what the new one is. And it ships from Estonia, but it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Well, I've got another spot, and it's a little bit larger, and it's called a UVIAJ spot. RFinder, I believe, made one for a while, or they put their brand name on it. It has a display on it, and it has two huge batteries in it. Plus, so it can run itself for maybe 12 hours on the go. It's got a battery meter on the back.
Wow.
And it's got charging ports, so you can actually use it to charge your cell phone or something else if you want to. It runs not PyStar, it runs something called O-Star, and that's a Japanese equivalent. All the manuals that I've seen are in Japanese, and I can't read that, so you got to fumble to find your way through. It works fairly well, and you can actually set up your Wi-Fi networks and set up a priority, so you can turn the thing on and go driving away, and it'll wander down and say, "Oh, I'm on the cell phone here." You can take it in the house, turn it on, and it goes, "Oh, there's the Wi-Fi network in the house. So it works very transparent and has a little a little display that will give you minimal information out of that you would have in a dashboard. Works pretty nice, but it's got the learning curve is a little steep on that one as well.
Can you still get those, Stan? Can you buy those still?
I believe so. I got one for a friend about a year ago, and we got the darn thing in, and it would not go into that access point mode, could not get connected to it and whatnot. Ended up sending it back, and I haven't looked lately, but I think they are around, and I would get it, but right now it's 2 rooms over in a box, so I can't bring it here to show you. But it works pretty slick. That's what I run for mobile stuff up north.
Got it. Hey, we're almost out of time, guys. We got 5 minutes left. Real quick, to help out with DMR, it helps to find an Elmer. That's what we try and do with this show, DMR Tech Net TV, and our weekly show, DMR Tech Net. But I put some stuff in the newsletter. Join a DMR net, visit local amateur radio clubs, check Facebook groups and online forums, search for local DMR repeater owners, and attend Hamfest and Tech Nights. What else would you guys say if you had somebody that asked you to help them with DMR? Let me start first with Stan, then we'll go to around the room here. Stan?
Well, yeah, I had to find my unmute button. Yeah, I've got a couple of people that I've helped out. One guy, before we left, I found him 2 GD77 radios, sat him down, put the open firmware on there, made them work with my ID, made them work with his ID, and said, okay, all you got to do is get yourself a hotspot and you're good to go. Well, he's been having a love affair with getting a hex beam up before the weather really got bad. So he has not touched those radios since then. But we do have a few people that are new, and we're kind of encouraging them to do some things. And some are a little afraid, and some are getting braver as they go.
Cool. Rick?
Well, I didn't get into it until after I retired and decided I wanted to play with digital for a while. So I pretty much found a lot of YouTube videos, and I bought the Anytone from Bridgecom, and I used their videos, and I kind of taught myself how to program the darn thing. So it is possible. Best thing though would be, get your license and sign up on Brandmeister, like use Hoseline, listen to some talk groups, see if you can find anybody local. It's on one of your local talk groups or one of your state talk groups, and try to contact them. Use QRZ info or whatever. Contact them and see what you can see if you can arrange phone calls, Zoom meetings, change emails. A lot of different avenues to find a ham. But once you got to find that guy with the call sign, and you may have to try more than one guy to get a good Elmer, but that's how I'd try and work.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. Tom?
Well, when I wanted to be a ham radio guy, I heard about ham radio from my buddy on the bus. Riding to school when I was 14, I think, or 15. And I literally went to a guy's house in my neighborhood that had a big antenna and a tower, and I knocked on his door. And he's the guy that gave me my novice test. Never met the guy. I knocked on him and he helped me. He Elmered me, but I had other Elmers. But that was in the 70s. I don't think you can knock on anybody's door anymore, unfortunately. But that's one way. Find a big antenna in your neighborhood, knock on the guy's door, and tell him you heard on DMR Tech Net TV that there's a DMR. I want to learn DMR, and see if he'll help you. You can try that, or you can search on on YouTube. That's what I did. Same old thing, you know. I was a slow YouTube adapter, but I forced myself to go through the junky ones, the crappy ones, found out who the good posters were, and got my information that way and fumbled around. So I would say a local club is very good. Find a club and just go in there, and everybody's going to be friendly, right? They'll help you to learn anything about ham radio, and there'll be somebody in that club that does DMR. I'll tell you that, or can get you started in the right direction. So that's what I would say.
Cool. James, thoughts, wisdom? Somebody wants to get started? What would you advise them?
I haven't particularly helped anybody, per se, like face to face. There's been people on the radio that have called out for different things and, asked some questions. So I was able to, provide what I knew to them. So, yeah, I mean, if I knew anybody who was getting into it that needed help, I'd be more than happy to, try to help them the best that I could. And I'm sure there's still a lot that I don't know, but, like Tom said, YouTube is a good thing. I'm just getting into SDRs, RTLs and SDR to the dongles, and so YouTube. So to learn how to do the trunking and listen to that. So I was able to get that up and running. So
Cool.
YouTube's a good one.
Dave?
Well, I'd have to say our local club has got a lot of DMR users in it, and of course the club also has a DMR machine up on 70 centimeters here, the Aero Club, and so that'd be anybody locally in the area around here. I would essentially say, well, I can certainly help them some too, but they would also probably do well to essentially contact the club president and the folks in the local club. It is unfortunately there's no one good solution that I thought that was online. I mean, Bridgecom. Boy, if you ever buy anything from Bridgecom, you'll get on their mailing list and they will pelt you with stuff that they want to get you to attend their webinars and all kinds of things. So there's one way to essentially also learn more about DMR through that setup, but that's pretty much all I've got to work with, I think.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Kurt, ideas that you have, suggestions?
Well, I kind of went Rick's path. I used YouTube and did buy a radio through any Bridgecom and went through their videos. I thought those were helpful. Did find a couple guys on YouTube that I thought were very good and helpful, and got mine going. After I got mine going, I found out that we have couple local repeaters on DMR, so went and talked to the repeater owner and talked to him, and he's in the club with us, the local club here. So he was helpful, and since then been helping some other guys in the local club get on. In fact, I think Jackson KF0OBF checked in to the TechNet one night.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you. And hey, Ron, how about you?
Well, I'm taking a little bit different approach. I think everything that was here was very interesting and a good way to look at it, but I think it's above the level of the people that I've been trying to help get going. So I tried to take the KISS system with them. I have an 878 and a hotspot, which I actually won from Brandmeister. But I have that set up, and I work with the people to get their technical license. And I reference them to a program called Ham Test Online. It's very good in the methodology they use for teaching. It's just like a college would set up a course. So they get their license and they say, okay, what do I do now? How do I hear all the stuff that we've been talking about and listening to on your radio? Well, that's when I pull out the handheld and the hotspot. We set it up together and we put in a few talk groups for them, and it's of their interest. And then they get the inquiry, really want to start moving from there, but I got to get them going. If not, what has happened when I've just thrown a lot of stuff at them at once, like trying to program it and all that sort of stuff, they generally just drop out. So I went back to a couple of those people and say, here's one that works, try it. And most of them come back and say, all right, now how do we go to a next step and whatnot? And then I use some of the Bridgecom movies, but it use a lot of YouTube, and but it's custom tailored for what it is that their knowledge base is of trying to look at ham radio. Most of the people that I work with have no inkling of what it is, so they hear me using it and all that, and then they become interested in it, but they know nothing about it. And these are computer people too, usually. They know what a network is, they know what a router is, they know what a gateway is, and all that sort of good stuff. So I try to relate those things to them when we start expanding more. But I go back to the old KISS system with it.
And you know what? Once you get into it, DMR is easy. But once you're getting started, it's a huge hill you got to climb. We're trying to simplify it on that. We got 2 more people I want to check in before we end this show tonight. Bob, Donald Quack Quack, you've been listening. You've been quiet. You're a new one to DMR. What would you look for to offer help if somebody asked you for help, or what would you tell them?
I generally refer them to you because there's that needs help that I don't know. And I'm still, like you say, I'm on the bottom rung of the ladder that seems to be an infinite story ladder. And I'm not sure where I'm at any one time. And when I try something, it doesn't work. And so I don't mess with it. When I got mine, it was set up and ready to go. My current problem is where I'm here in Florida, the kids bought a different router. So now I've got to try and reprogram so that the thing can see the router here. Home works fine, but it won't work here. So I'm in no position to give anybody any kind of opinion in terms of how to get started or where to go, except go see Dana.
And finally, we've got Ken. Ken, good evening. Welcome to DMR Tech Net TV. What would you recommend? I can't tell if he's there or not. Not hearing anything. That'll be our final thoughts tonight. Thank you all for joining us. And as I said, we're just trying to go through and make DMR easier to use, trying to explain what it is and how to use it so that we can get more people involved. So everyone, if you can be an Elmer, that comes in handy. If you want to join us, we are Monday night, 7:30 p.m. on Brandmeister Talk Group 31266, the Michigan Nets channel at 7:30 for DMR Tech Net. And then we do the Tech Net TV every month on the 3rd Tuesday. Check out our website, join our mailing list, and hopefully we'll hear you on the air with DMR. Thanks for watching this month's edition of DMR Tech Net TV.